You wake up next to the person you vowed to share your life with. You get out of bed, go through the motions, coffee, emails, meetings. You remember to pay the bills. You kiss the kids goodbye. You smile. You function. You survive. But something inside you feels like it's missing. Not broken, not wrong, just incomplete. And you can't explain it, not even to yourself. Because from the outside, your life looks good. There's structure, routine, a stable marriage. And yet, your heart whispers someone else's name when your mind finally quiets down. No one ever tells you how much your soul can ache, even when your life is full. How you can love your partner, honor the vows, and still feel a longing that isn't satisfied by predictable kisses and carefully managed conversations. It's not lust. It's not a fantasy. It's the feeling that somewhere out there, there's someone who sees you completely without needing you to perform, without asking you to shrink. You met him. Maybe only once. Maybe just in a moment, a glance, a conversation that should have meant nothing, but it awakened something. Something ancient, something sacred, something you thought didn't exist anymore. And the worst part, you still show up, you still work, you still clean the house, meet deadlines, cook dinner, answer messages. But underneath it all, you're torn. Your mind is married, your body is committed, but your soul is somewhere else entirely. You don't talk about it. Because how could you? What would you even say that the person you long for isn't your husband, that the man who makes your chest tighten when he walks into a room is someone you're not supposed to want to keep telling yourself it's just a phase, just chemistry, just emotional confusion. But something deeper in you knows it's not. Because this connection, it feels fated. He doesn't even have to touch you. He just has to look at you, really look, and suddenly you remember who you are beneath the layers of responsibility and roles. You remember the woman who once felt alive just by being seen, the one who didn't always have to be strong or perfect. But now, everything is compartmentalized. You've mastered the art of emotional multitasking, loving one, longing for another, fulfilling your duties while starving your soul, and no one knows. No one sees the storm beneath your skin, not even him, the one who shares your bed, because you've learned to hide it all so well. But it's affecting you, not just emotionally, energetically, even professionally. You used to be on fire at work, inspired, driven. Now you're tired, foggy. Your creativity has dulled. You try to focus, but your thoughts drift to that laugh, that memory, that man. The meetings blur. Your body is present, but your energy is fractured. And you wonder, is this emotional betrayal, or is it emotional survival? Because the truth is, the longing didn't ask your permission. It wasn't planned. You didn't go looking for it. You just woke up one day and realized that someone out there feels like home in a way your house never has. This is where the inner war begins. Not between good and bad, but between truth and loyalty. Between feeling alive and staying safe. You think about walking away. But what would that even look like? The family, the history, the shared memories. And then there's guilt. The kind that swallows your voice and buries your desire beneath the weight of should. You should be happy. You should be grateful. You should be over it. But no amount of should can kill what is felt at the soul level. Carl Jung spoke of the anima and animus, the inner feminine and inner masculine. He taught that when we meet someone who embodies that inner opposite, it's not just attraction, it's activation. It feels cosmic, because it is, but that doesn't mean it's meant to be acted upon. Sometimes, that person enters your life not to be held, but to awaken you, to remind you of the parts of yourself you've buried in the name of being the good wife, the responsible adult, the efficient worker. He reflects the version of you abandoned, to become who the world needed you to be. And now, your soul is asking, is this all there is? That's the real ache, not for him, but for yourself, for the self that once dreamed, once burned, once glowed. You try to bring her back. You start dressing differently, writing again, looking at the sky with wonder instead of exhaustion. And suddenly, work doesn't feel like survival. It becomes a place where you can breathe again, where you can create, imagine, build. But even there, he follows you, not physically, but in thought, in energy, because the soul doesn't obey logic. It speaks in symbols, and he is the symbol of everything you lost when you gave your life away to a story that no longer fits. Some days you feel strong. You tell yourself, this will pass. You remind yourself of the good in your life, and there is good. But good is not the same as full. You've outgrown the roles, but the costume still fits. So you keep performing, And you wonder what would happen if you stopped pretending, stopped apologizing for your depth, stopped settling for conversations that don't move you, an intimacy that doesn't open you. But you don't, because you're scared, not of the consequences, but of the truth. The truth that maybe, just maybe, you were never meant to choose what was safe. You were meant to choose what was true. And yet, you didn't. Now you wake up every day living a version of someone else's dream while your soul watches from the sidelines waiting for you to remember. To remember who you are, what you feel, what you came here to experience. And maybe you never will hold him. Maybe you'll never speak the words out loud. Maybe this will remain your sacred secret, the one you carry in silence, even as you raise children, attend meetings, kiss your husband goodnight. But even in silence, the soul speaks. And one day, you'll have to answer, because the longer you pretend not to feel it, the more parts of you go numb. And eventually, you won't just lose him, you'll lose yourself. Before we continue, if this message is speaking to something deep inside you, that's not random. The Jung method can help you understand why. The link is in the first comment. You keep going, not because you feel whole, but because you've learned how to keep moving while cracked open. The dishes still need to be washed. Deadlines still need to be met. Birthdays still need to be remembered. And somewhere between your morning meetings and your late-night routines, your soul keeps tugging, softly, painfully, relentlessly. You think of him again, not in a romantic way, not in a lustful way, but in that way that feels like remembering a dream you once lived inside. He didn't save you, he didn't promise you anything, but he reminded you of the parts of yourself that don't get touched by grocery lists and calendar invites. And that's the thing no one tells you about longing. It's not just about another person. It's about what that person mirrors back to you. Your softness, your wildness, your laughter before it was managed, your light before it was dimmed, your voice before it was edited. You wonder why it hit you so hard. Why one glance, one moment, one ordinary interaction felt like an earthquake in your chest. You weren't looking for trouble. You weren't looking for anyone. You were just tired. And something in him recognized it. Not in words, but in the way his energy settled when you spoke, in the way his eyes paused like they'd seen you before. Maybe they had, maybe in another life, maybe in a version of this one you never got to live. You think back to the first time you felt it, the spark, the silence after, the confusion, the guilt, the hunger, because this kind of connection doesn't just awaken desire, it awakens memory. Memory of who you were before the compromises before. The adaptations before you settled for being loved in parts. And now, you walk around with a split heart. One half in duty, one half in dreams. And both sides pulling at you with equal force. You cry in secret, not because you're weak, but because you're tired of hiding the most real part of yourself, just to keep the structure intact. You tried to fight it. You tried to distract yourself with productivity, with motherhood, with perfection. But the ache grew louder. Not because you're ungrateful. Not because you're unstable, but because you're awakening. Awakening is violent sometimes. It rips through what you thought was enough and shows you a life you could have had if you had chosen differently or dared more, boldly, or listened when your intuition whispered instead of screamed. But here you are, in a marriage with history, a home with photos on the wall, a life with routines you've memorized, and yet your soul is starving, because it was never about needing someone new. It was about remembering the woman you buried beneath. Someone old, the one who danced, barefoot, who spoke her mind without editing, who laughed without covering her mouth, who touched without permission from her shame. He reminded you of her, not because he is the answer, but because he was the mirror. And that's the hardest part. To love the mirror, but no, you cannot live inside it, so you carry on. But the burden is different now, not heavier, just clearer. You see what you've given up, not because you had to, but because you didn't know you were allowed to want more. Not more stuff, more truth, more resonance, more presence. You begin to realize this isn't just about love, it's about life. Your work begins to reflect your longing. You notice how uninspired you've been, how often you've created just to meet a need instead of expressing something alive in you. You notice your exhaustion is not physical but emotional because pretending is a full-time job. And you wonder, if I stopped pretending, what would remain? If you let the mask fall, if you let your voice rise, if you let your truth speak, would your life shatter? Or would it finally begin? The scariest thing is not losing your marriage, it's losing yourself so slowly you forget you were ever whole to begin with. Some nights you journal, hoping to write the ache out of your bones. You light a candle, not because you're religious, but because some part of you still believes in sacred things, and you write not to remember him, but to remember you. You write about the time your eyes locked across the room, about the way his silence held more truth than most conversations, about how he made you want to come back to your own skin, but you never send it, you never speak it, you never confess, because it's not really about him, it's about the version of you he woke up. You walk through your days now with more awareness. You pay attention to the way you feel in certain rooms, in certain conversations, in certain roles. You begin to ask questions you once avoided. Is this what I want or what I accepted? Does this feed me or drain me? Am I living or performing? And the answers don't come quickly, but they come, and with every answer a layer peels back. You notice you're less reactive, more honest, more tender with yourself. You stop blaming yourself for feeling and start honoring the fact that you still do, because so many women don't. They shut it off. They go numb. They call it maturity when it's actually grief. But you chose to feel, even when it hurts, even when it complicates things, even when it makes you question everything. And that choice, that brave, quiet choice to stay awake in a life that wants to sedate you, is everything. You begin to move differently, not loudly, but deliberately. You wear what feels right. You speak what feels real. You rest when you're tired, not when it's convenient. Little by little you return not to him, but to yourself. The woman who knows that love without aliveness is not enough, that duty without desire is not devotion, that connection without freedom is not sacred. You may never tell anyone about him. You may never see him again. You may never get closure or clarity or confirmation, but you got something else. You got your reflection back, and that is worth everything, because now when you show up to work, to life, to marriage, you show up with your eyes open, and even if you never act on that longing, you honor it as the messenger. It came to wake you, not to ruin you. It came to remind you, not to possess you. It came to say you are still alive, and you still deserve to feel that way. You are not a bad wife, not a selfish woman, not a traitor. You are a soul trying to remember itself in a world that asks you to forget, and remembering is the most honest thing you can do. So breathe. Take the longing, turn it into art, turn it into movement, turn it into truth. And if you still think of him, let that be a prayer, not a punishment. He showed you something holy. Let that be enough, because even if he was not yours, he brought you back to yourself, and that was the real love story all along.